You are trapped. There's no elegant way to put it. You've built a cell around your own life, and the most ironic part is that you did it believing you were taking control. Every decision you made to please others, every word you swallowed for fear of causing discomfort, every fake smile you gave when you wanted to break into pieces, brick by brick, you erected your own walls. That pressure in your chest that suffocates you is not anxiety. It's not stress. It's the weight of having betrayed yourself for so long. You've lived like a character in your own life, designed to please, to fit in, to not make noise. But no one asked you to do it. No one told you to give up your essence, your truth. You decided that voluntarily. You tied yourself to an idea of perfection that only exists in your mind. You gave up your identity for a handful of compliments that didn't fill you up. Now, when you look in the mirror, who are you really? How much of what you see still belongs to you, and how much has become a mask you can no longer remove? They sold you the lie of control. They told you that if you managed to dominate every aspect of your life, then you would be safe. But control is a treacherous drug. It makes you feel powerful while it destroys you from the inside. You try to hold on to everything so tightly that, in the end, the only thing you achieve is losing yourself. The truth no one wants to hear is that absolute control does not exist. It's a prison disguised as power. The more you try to control every detail, the more you suffocate, the more you become a prisoner of your own expectations. Enough. You don't have to keep carrying that weight. Stop trying to be what others expect. Stop controlling every little part of your life. Let go of fear. Let go of the need for approval. Because living while trying to keep everything under control is living chained. The more you try to control every aspect of your life, the deeper you sink into anxiety, into that silent desperation that slowly consumes you. You find yourself trapped in an endless cycle of planning, always waiting for the perfect moment to come, but it never quite arrives. Have you stopped to think why, despite having achieved what you thought you wanted, you still feel that constant emptiness? It's because what you have is not truly yours. You've built your successes on fragile foundations, tainted by the need to be accepted, to be seen in a specific way. Your relationships, your achievements, even your thoughts are plagued by the anxiety of how they will be perceived by others. The more you strive to obtain that external validation, the more you lose yourself in the process. You disconnect from that essence you once recognized as your own, which now barely remains a distant echo. Michel de Montaigne understood this centuries ago from the solitude of his tower. He saw clearly something that you still refuse to accept today. The real enemy is not external circumstances but your unhealthy need to control the uncontrollable. Detachment does not mean indifference. It is the only path to genuine freedom. It's about stopping the exhausting effort to please, to fit in, to constantly avoid judgment. But the great fear remains, letting go. Because letting go means facing the fear of losing everything. But what if I told you that the very act of letting go is what can save you? That rope you're gripping so tightly doesn't hold you, it's choking you. Control is nothing but an illusion. You cannot dominate every twist of fate, and the more you resist, the more harm you do to yourself. The irony is brutal. The more you struggle to retain control, the less control you actually have. And the more you try to please everyone, the further you stray from your authenticity. Change comes, inevitable and relentless, without asking for permission. The secret is not to resist it but to embrace it with courage. It is not an act of surrender, it is an act of wisdom. Let go of the compulsion to control everything. Let go of the fear of being judged. Let go of the need to be someone you're really not. Think for a moment, what would happen if you stopped carrying that weight? Who would you be without that fear that haunts you? What would you do if you knew that no one would ever judge you? That image that comes to your mind when you think of freedom, that version of yourself that lives without restrictions, without mental chains, is your true essence. But behind this idea lies something more raw, something hidden deep within. You fear letting go of control because deep down, you don't know who you are without that need to control. It's terrifying, I know. Because if you strip away all those expectations you've accumulated, what's left? Who are you without that mask you've been holding onto for so long? The fear doesn't just lie in the unknown, but in the possibility of discovering that your identity has faded in the process of trying to fit in. You've mixed so much of who you are with what others expect from you that you're afraid that if you leave it all behind, nothing will remain. But here comes the brutal and yet liberating truth that Montaigne understood centuries ago, isolated in his tower. Letting go of what you are not is the only way to discover who you truly are. The freedom you so desperately crave is not found in controlling the chaos around you, nor in following others' rules just to avoid discomfort. It lies in the act of letting go, of daring to face life without fear of what others might think. The truth is this: you don't need anyone's approval to be authentic. You don't need to manipulate the unpredictable course of life to feel safe. And you don't need to keep being that version of yourself you built out of fear of rejection. Freedom is not found in any self-help manual, nor in motivational speeches that promise success in 10 steps. It is right here, in this moment, in your decision to stop pretending. The truth is this: you don't need anyone's approval to be authentic. You don't need to manipulate the unpredictable course of life to feel safe. And you don't need to keep being that version of yourself you built out of fear of rejection. Freedom is not found in any self-help manual, nor in motivational speeches that promise success in 10 steps. It is right here, in this moment, in your decision to stop pretending. But let's be honest, letting go is not easy. It's brutally uncomfortable. It means opening yourself to uncertainty, to the possibility of losing what you thought was essential. However, it is the only way to truly know yourself. Because when you stop clinging to a borrowed identity, you begin to glimpse what was always there. Your pure essence, without artifices, without masks. So ask yourself, are you going to keep clinging to control, to that prison you forged for yourself, knowing that you are drifting further and further away from who you really are? Or are you going to take the risk of leaping into the void, toward a freedom that scares you but, in the end, is the only thing that can make you feel truly alive? This is the beginning of a path that is not for everyone. It is the route toward detachment, toward the liberation from all the mental chains that have kept you stuck. It will be uncomfortable, it will be challenging, but I promise you that the alternative, staying in the same place, living the same empty life, is much worse. They made you believe that success was about reaching goals, climbing to the top, accumulating achievements as if they were medals proving your worth. But have you ever asked yourself if those goals were truly yours? You have spent so much time chasing the concept of success that others defined for you that you never stopped to think if you actually wanted to reach that place. Now you are there, at the peak of something that once seemed important. But when you look around, what do you see? Is it the landscape you dreamed of, or just a distorted image of what someone else said you should become? We were programmed to believe that success is the ultimate goal, that upon reaching it, peace, balance, and a sense of belonging would follow. But what does it really mean to be successful? And more importantly, whose idea of success is it? Maybe you have already achieved many of those goals that others deemed important. The right job, the correct studies, the strategic friendships. But when everything goes quiet and you are left alone with yourself, there is a feeling that remains, bothersome, unsettling. That discomfort that doesn't go away is the part of you that refuses to keep pretending. It is your essence reminding you that you are still far from being who you truly are. Montaigne understood it during his isolation. Away from the noise and the expectations of others, he grasped a truth that few are willing to accept. True success is not about accumulating titles, possessions, or recognition. True success is living according to what you feel, aligned with who you are, without forcing characters that only drain your spirit. But to achieve that, you first have to stop playing the role you have been performing for so long. You got used to living a borrowed life, fitting into molds designed by others, maintaining a facade that doesn't reflect your truth. You have invested so much in that image that you don't even remember who you are when you take off the disguise. But your mind is not naive, and even if you try to fool yourself, it knows you are living a lie. And sooner or later that mask will fall off. Because the truth, no matter how uncomfortable, always comes to light. Here's the truth: as long as you keep clinging to personas that don't represent you, you will never find peace. That anxiety that consumes you, the stress that builds up, and the emptiness that settles in your chest are the reflections of a life that isn't yours. They are the consequences of betraying yourself repeatedly to meet others' expectations. Montaigne had it clear: to stop pretending is the first step toward freedom. But I won't lie to you, letting go of that version of yourself that you created to please others is not comfortable. It means opening yourself to judgment, rejection, the possibility of not being accepted. But it's also the only way to find yourself again. Most people prefer to stay in that gray zone, that no man's land where discomfort becomes a habit. They choose the safety of a half-lived life rather than the risk of facing the truth of who they really are. They settle for the crumbs of happiness that routines throw at them because at least there are no surprises, no challenges, no uncomfortable questions. And you, which group are you in? Are you one of those who take the risk of facing themselves, or one of those who prefer to numb themselves with routine to avoid confronting what hurts? Because yes, routine is a silent drug. It keeps you trapped in a loop of automatic actions, makes you believe you are doing something with your life when, in reality, you are just surviving. It gives you the false impression of stability, but the price you pay is immense: the loss of your inner freedom. And freedom is not doing whatever you want whenever you want. It's not living without rules or commitments. Freedom is being authentic, even when it means disappointing others or breaking away from what's established. Maybe now fear creeps in. What if, by showing who I really am, I lose what I've worked so hard to achieve? But here's a truth no one dares to tell you. If you have to pretend to keep what you have, then it was never truly yours. Genuine relationships, projects that truly matter, achievements that are genuinely worthwhile, all survive your authenticity. In fact, only from your essence can you know what is worth keeping and what was merely occupying space in your life. The problem is that you've been conditioned to think that being yourself is a risk when, in reality, it's the only thing that can bring you peace. What do you really have to lose? The acceptance of people who don't know you? The recognition of those who only value the facade you present? All that is fragile and fleeting. But what you can gain is much greater. The peace of living without masks, of knowing that what surrounds you is authentic, not a mirage built out of the fear of rejection. Montaigne understood it from his voluntary retreat. He let go of everything that was not essential and discovered that detachment does not mean giving up what you love, but realizing that nothing can possess you if you do not cling to it with desperation. Because what you hold on to out of fear eventually ends up possessing you. That's the truth nobody wants to hear. As long as you keep holding on to relationships, titles, or identities that do not represent you, you will remain a slave to your own fear of loss. Most people live terrified of losing what they have because they have never allowed themselves to find out what would happen if they let go. They would rather forcefully hold on to what keeps them safe than risk discovering something genuine. But the reality is that life truly begins when you stop clinging to what you are not. So what are you going to do? Are you going to keep living on autopilot, waiting for things to change on their own? Or will you finally dare to break the cycle, let go of what no longer fits with you, and embrace the uncertainty you fear so much? Because at the end of the day, the only thing really holding you back is your own fear of discovering who you are when you stop acting. This is the path Montaigne chose, the path of direct confrontation with oneself, the courage to let go of the unnecessary to discover the essential. Are you going to remain a spectator of your own life, waiting for something external to set you free? Or are you going to take the risk of being yourself with everything that implies? Because storytelling, whether in life or in fiction, is not just a way to escape. It is a reflection of who we are and who we want to be. By telling stories, we project our struggles, our desires, and our contradictions. Fiction, at its core, is a rehearsal for real life, a safe space where we can explore without the consequences of the tangible world. And in times of crisis, when external noise overwhelms us, telling our own story may be the only way to find answers. Because narrating is not just about sharing experiences. It is also about daring to expose our vulnerabilities, dismantling certainties, and building a more honest identity. Here arises a troubling question. How powerful are the stories you tell yourself about who you are? Have you ever stopped to think about how those internal narratives influence your daily decisions? Maybe you never noticed, but that story you cultivate in your mind filters every experience, shapes your perceptions, and ends up dictating the course of your life, as if you were the protagonist of a play you are writing without even realizing it. This power is not just social or cultural, it is deeply personal. The stories you choose to tell about who you are can become anchors that keep you stuck or wings that propel you toward new horizons. And then the inevitable question arises, what would happen if you changed that story? What if you stopped repeating the same lines over and over? Think about it for a moment. Many people live trapped in inherited stories, carrying narratives of failure, limitation, or imposed roles that they accepted as absolute truths. Stories that others wrote for them and that they ended up accepting without questioning. Reclaiming your narrative is not just an act of rebellion, it's a silent revolution. It means moving from being a victim of circumstances to becoming the author of your own destiny. But there's something even more fascinating. The stories you tell yourself not only affect what you do but also influence how the world perceives you. Your internal narrative becomes a silent script that others interpret without even realizing it. If you constantly tell yourself that you are not good enough, the world will respond as if that version were true. On the other hand, if you start building a story where you are capable, worthy, and valuable, opportunities seem to appear out of nowhere. It's as if your personal perception is reflected in the eyes of others. And here arises another important point: contradiction. Because no one is completely linear. Your personal story should not be rigid or uniform. Accepting that your narrative is full of nuances, contradictions, dark areas, and unexpected turns is to embrace what it means to be human. The best stories are not the ones that fit perfectly. They are the ones that challenge you, make you uncomfortable, and leave you reflecting when you thought you had it all figured out. In that imperfection lies the true beauty of storytelling. Life, like the stories we create, is full of moments of confusion, doubts, and small flashes of clarity. And the most profound truth of all this is that the story is never complete. Every decision you make, every conversation you have, every silence you keep adds another line to that work in progress that is your life. We are perpetual writers of a story that never really ends. Sometimes conscious of what we are crafting, sometimes not so much. But the truth is that every day is a new page. What once seemed like the darkest chapter today may be read as the prologue to a rebirth. That is the alchemy of human storytelling, transforming scars into symbols, mistakes into lessons, and silences into necessary pauses. And here comes the final twist. What if the true art of living doesn't lie in knowing exactly what story you are telling? Because there is freedom in uncertainty too. You don't need to define whether you're in a comedy, a tragedy, or an epic. Sometimes, the magic is precisely in not knowing, in letting yourself be carried away by the creative chaos of your existence. The most powerful stories are not the ones that end with a perfect conclusion, but those that leave you wanting to keep writing because you know there is still so much to discover. And even though we have reached the end of this chapter, you and I both know that endings don't really exist. They are just ellipses that push us to keep writing, exploring, and questioning. If something you heard resonated with you, if you feel ready to rewrite your story, leave this phrase in the comments: I choose to tell myself anew. That way I'll know you made it this far, that you are ready to break away from imposed narratives and start telling your story from a place of authenticity. See you in the next episode. We may not have absolute answers, but we will undoubtedly leave with deeper questions. Until then, close this chapter, but don't archive it. Because the next paragraph might just be the one that finally changes your entire story.